Your support helps us bring you programs you love. Go to wyomingpbs.org, click on Support, and become a sustaining member or an annual member. It's easy and secure. Thank you.
The South Fork Canyon near Cody has the highest concentration of ice falls in the lower 48. Its difficult access combined with its remote location has made it a favorite ice climbing destination for the intrepid few and especially for Aaron Mulkey. We'll meet the world-class ice climber and adventure seeker next on Wyoming Chronicle.
Funding for this program is made possible in part by the Wyoming Humanities Council, helping Wyoming take a closer look at life through the humanities, thinkwy.org, and by the members of the Wyoming PBS Foundation. Thank you for your support.
I don't want to know a life without an unknown in the mountains. To get out there and go find those things, that's what keeps me alive. That's what keeps that spark going.
Water is a defining feature of this planet. In its liquid state, it covers 70% of the Earth's surface, and its solid state is responsible for shaping much of what remains. When we reflect on these processes, we often think in geologic terms, thousands, if not millions of years. Rivers snaking from one bend to the other, glaciers carving canyons from mountains. Today in the continental United States, much of the glacial formation of the Rocky Mountains is complete. But the ice is still here. The valley through which the South Fork of the Shoshone River flows in northwestern Wyoming has one of the highest concentrations of ice falls in North America. For a few months every year, with its unique climate and topography, water and ice conspire to reshape this canyon into a new world. In as little as a few days, an area previously thought to be known will transform into an alien landscape. Loose, overhanging cliffs solidify with the cold and become draped in blankets of ice. The melting snow above continually adds to the formations, changing their shape and character a little every day. There's only one way to access these natural wonders, and for those who seek such adventure, they'll find their fill here.
The South Fork Canyon in Wyoming is this incredible valley, 36 miles outside of Cody. A dirt road leads you to a dead end. And from that point, no matter which way you walk, you're walking into wilderness. In fact, you're walking into one of the most remote places in the continental US. It gives you this sense of rawness and wildness that is really hard to find in the United States right now.
That wilderness has led a string of ice explorers to develop the area into a world-class climbing destination. In the 1980s, Kurt Cousins, along with his brother Todd and Monty Madsen, began establishing the first ice climbs in the canyon. Todd became particularly drawn to the South Fork, and through the mid-1990s, pioneered many of the largest and most popular routes to this day. Todd's first ascents were followed with the arrival of Aaron Mulkey in the late 1990s. With many of the obvious lines having already been established, Aaron has had to push the exploration for new ice even further.
Ice starts to form in October and runs into March or April. Ice comes and goes throughout that time. As the Earth rotates and the sun is hitting different spots at different times, and so there'll be ice climbs that don't form until maybe March. There'll be ice climbs that form in October, November, but then melt in January. Most of these ice climbs, the only way to get to that particular spot is to ice climb, because the ice is actually what allows the access into these cliffs and into these canyons. But that's also like the really unique thing about ice climbing, is that these things, you'll watch them for years, and then they're finally there, and you've got to go get them.
For over 20 years, Aaron has been leading the exploration in the South Fork Canyon. In that span, he's managed to pack in a lifetime's worth of first ascents, with over 100 to his name.
Not everybody's like me, where they want to choose the unknown. You got to be willing to go one step further than the last person, and that takes some drive. And at the end of the day, I really think it probably takes maybe an addiction. You get to go and climb this thing that nobody's ever seen, ever been on, and then to think that 2 months later, or sometimes days later, it's gone. It vanishes. It's no longer there. You're kind of lucky to be there. And the feeling that kind of comes with being the first, it's pretty awesome. Not only get to name it, but it takes you back to hundreds of years ago, and why did the explorers go and explore, right? Like, well, to see what nobody else has seen. That is that wildness that the South Fork provides. The Absaroka Range is quite large. Like, the South Fork Valley is really just one part. Like, I'm just picking away at this one small section on the map, and I get further and further into each little drainage and each little sliver. I mean, I'm 20 years and there's still stuff, and there will be stuff for my entire lifetime. And so until those places are all explored and I feel like everything has been touched and everything has been seen, I'll keep having my addiction. And then the hardest part about that is that valley that I went to 2 years ago and there was no ice. Who's to say there's not ice there today?
And we welcome our viewers to this very special Wyoming Chronicle. We're taking into account the needs to have social distancing today, but still we're very, very pleased to be joined with Aaron Mulkey. Aaron, welcome to Wyoming Chronicle.
Thanks for having me.
Our viewers have just seen the wonderful Our Wyoming piece that we produced with you, so they, I think, understand just a little bit about ice climbing. But when did you start, Aaron? How did you get involved in the sport, I guess?
Oh, well, I got started in the mid-'90s. Was fresh out of high school and played soccer most of my life, and thought, I was working with a friend that said, hey, you want to go out climbing? And I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea. And next thing I know, I was out ice climbing. I think my third time climbing was ice climbing, and absolutely fell in love with it, and moved to Wyoming 2 years later.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up most of my life in California. Well, not most anymore. Most of my life is now in Wyoming, but grew up in California, and then moved to Colorado, and was in Colorado for about 4 years, and then moved to Wyoming in 1998.
So in the piece that our viewers saw just a moment ago, you talk about how really the ice climbing near Cody is really world class. What does that mean?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely world class and world renowned. It's because of the concentration of ice that's in the valley. So the South Fork Valley has the highest concentration of ice in the lower 48 states. And it really is the topography and really just how the elevation of where that valley sits and the melt freeze cycle that happens through the winter that forms these massive ice falls that fall off of these cliffs all around you.
So we're recording this on April 2nd, a day before it airs for the first time. You could still be climbing now and even later into the season. Is that right?
Yeah, typically, I would still be climbing this time of year, but right now I'm staying at home and trying to be part of the solution. And but yeah, normally I can climb into May. Sometimes it's really about how long do you want to go climb. Usually, that warm weather really starts to pull you in and wants you to go do something that maybe isn't quite as cold.
So is that for you hiking in the summertime? Is it rock climbing? How do you round out your adventurism?
Well, I focus at my early spring a lot on, I have a bunch of chickens and turkeys and things like that. So I really focus on getting that going. I try to raise most of my own meat And then I start kayaking. So as that ice starts to melt, I start following it downhill. And I've done about 4 or 5 first ascents in Wyoming, and love kayaking. I love the exploration of really all of the rivers and creeks we have in Wyoming. There's so many fabulous ones to go check out.
On the thrill-seeking scale, which is more adrenaline rushing for you?
Ooh, boy, it depends. Kayaking in general, for the most part, can definitely be a little bit more adrenaline packed because, if you're looking at a big waterfall or a big drop, there's no pause button. Whereas climbing, you could take on climbing a really serious ice fall, but a lot of those times you can take that moment and breathe. Whereas once you're in a river in the flow, there's no pause.
How have you learned about safety of the ice climbing sport? And I just, the footage that we have is just stunning, Aaron. And we watch you cut ice, cover your face. The ice drops below. We've seen video of an ice falling down to your person who's holding your rope for you, but yet they're protected. How do you learn about safety in this sport?
That's one of the unfortunate things about ice climbing. Is one of the best ways to learn is to do it. And those years of experience have allowed me to be able to look at an ice fall and decide, is this safe to climb? What are the dangers that are here? If something was to happen, let's think about how we're going to deal with those situations. And so it really is experience, because the ice is different from day to day, year to year. And so you have to kind of you start to have this bond with the ice, if you will. And throwing that axe into that ice, you definitely start to kind of have a feeling of, is this ice good? Is it bad? What's kind of going on here? And really become one with it.
It seems to me that you could go to a place this week and it could be entirely safe. And next week, it could just entirely change. Or maybe even the next day.
Absolutely. This time of year especially, right, we got these huge temperature swings and lots of different things that are happening there. And so, yeah, it could be great. Like today, it's 5 degrees here in Cody. The ice is probably fabulous, brittle, but fabulous. As it raises up in temperatures, then that stuff's going to soften up. There could be water running over the top of it. Things could be starting to detach from the rock. All those things have to be taken into consideration. The safest ice falls this time of year are the biggest ice falls, the most, the ones that are 4 or 5 feet, 10 feet thick and big and long. The ones that are dangerous are the ones that are really thin or hanging daggers and things like that. Those are going to detach from the wall quite quickly. There's just not much of a stability that's there. So
there's ice falls for where natural waterfalls are. There's ice falls formed from other snow melts that just form. Are there different styles of ice that you climb? And give us a description of what those might be.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's big, fat, giant ice falls you get to go climb, and then there's pillars. So if you can imagine a piece of ice dripping off the top of your roof, and it hits at the bottom, right? And those things start to keep dripping, and eventually they touch together, and that's a pillar.
Okay.
And so you can climb those when they're really thin and scary, or you can climb them when they're really big. And then there's also mixed climbing. So, that icicle that's hanging on your roof, we then started to think, well, that thing's never going to touch, so let's figure out how to get to it. So then we started climbing the rock to go to the actual hanging chunk of ice. And that's called mixed climbing. So that's probably the newest, biggest thing that's kind of going on is because ice, there's only so much ice, although in Wyoming there's still lots of ice. But the mixed climbing is really fun, and it's usually a much more challenging physically as well.
Give us an idea of the number of folks in Wyoming who participate in this sport. Are there a dozen? Are there 100? Do we know?
Gosh, as far as there's a lot of people that, there's not a lot of people. Obviously, there's not a ton of people in Wyoming that ice climb. But the ones that are pretty avid at it are been doing it for a long time. I think there's a lot of people that are more, looking for the weekend outing. There's not as many that are like, oh, I want to go hike in the woods with Mulkey for, 5 hours and maybe not climb. There's not as many of those people. But there are a few. I have partner that lives in Douglas, Wyoming, and drives up just about every weekend to come climb in Cody. So they are out there, but there's not as many climbers as there are skiers. That's for sure.
A lot of rock climbers in Wyoming. Do those skills translate well, or is it just like the difference between cross country and downhill skiing?
Yeah, they slightly transfer, but really they don't. A lot of rock climbers are not really into ice climbing. They don't, it's the cold, it's something different. And for them, it could also be their off season. I don't rock climb that much. Ice climbing is kind of my thing. But I've also found over the years that having kind of a pause and not being on a rope and tied into a rope, every month out of the year gives me an opportunity come September to recheck everything. You don't get complacent, and that's usually where accidents happen. But back to your original question is, yeah, the rock climbers, some of the movement is the same, but it is very different in a lot of ways.
The time that I felt most unsure about my next step or my next throw of my ice axe was when?
This year I had about an 80-foot pillar break, and it was the first ascent. It had never been done before. I knew looking at the pillar it was really not structurally super stable. My partner and I talked about it. We chose to still go for it. So I climbed the mixed route to get onto this thing that I had bolted back in September. And it was important that we climbed this thing really quickly because it was very high up in elevation and a lot of snow accumulates. So your window of opportunity for this place was only about a month, maybe two. So we saw it. I thought that it was probably a 50-50 chance of this pillar breaking once I hit it. And sure enough, I hit it and the entire thing went crumbling to the ground. If you can imagine a chunk of ice, probably about 8 to 10 feet in circumference, crashing to the ground 100 feet below you. That was, at that swing as I went into it was interesting. And I was about 15 feet away from my last piece of gear. So I was looking at a pretty big fall. Thankfully, I didn't commit to that tool. Right as it hit, it pretty much snapped. And
that's probably an interesting point. You probably have to, swing your axe or put your foot in and then make sure before you commit. Like you're saying, is that the way the process works? You're testing, then pulling, and testing, and then pushing?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, when you know it's good, when you have a good swing, it's good. You start to feel that solid swing and that solid chunk of ice. But especially with really thin things, it could look so, and as you pull down onto it, it just breaks. So yeah, when you get into the really technical stuff, there's a lot of, you swing, you try it a little bit, put some weight on there, and move along. The object for the most part is to try to get most of your weight into your feet and not so much in your arms. And that's really where technique becomes really important because your leg muscles are a lot bigger than your arm muscles. So the last thing you want is to be getting pumped out of your mind and not be able to hold on to your tools anymore and looking at a big fall.
Aaron, give us a sense of the equipment that you use and what you have to take everything with you. What do you take?
Yeah. So you've got ice axes, and those are what you hold on to as you go up. You're swinging those into the ice. Then you have crampons. So if you can imagine, crampons are metal points that you put onto your boot that you're climbing with. So once you get to the ice fall, you'll put those crampons on, and they have basically 2 front points in them or a single point, and you kick those into the ice. The other piece of gear that's incredibly important is ice screws. So if you can imagine like a wood screw, but imagine it being hollow, and as you put that screw in, something's going to come out the middle, right? So that's what an ice screw is sort of like, but much, much bigger. So an ice screw is usually, it could be about maybe 6, 7, 8 inches long. And about probably a 1/2 inch in diameter. So as you put that in, that's kind of your protection. Now, you really don't want to fall on those because they are strong, but they're only as strong as the threads and as strong as the ice is. The number one rule in ice climbing is really just don't fall. There's way too many sharp things on you, so you do not want to fall. I can think it's been many years, but the last time I fell ice climbing, I put an ice axe into my bicep. So you don't want to fall.
Ouch, ouch. So you continue to explore the South Fork. Where else is just top on your list for areas that you either want to climb or have climbed before maybe even in the world or certainly in all of the United States?
Yeah. I've been to Norway several times. Norway is kind of an ice climber's Disneyland. There's lots and lots of ice in Norway. Not a very cheap place to get to, but absolutely beautiful, incredible. And then, I spend a lot of my time here because there's still so much exploration still to be done. And it really is kind of been my passion here. I just, it's good to be at home and still be able to go and explore these places over, 20 years later. I'm still able to walk up valleys and find new stuff, which is just remarkable. I just don't have enough time. I need to find more time to go climb all the stuff I want to climb.
You name many of your routes. What do you use for inspiration for what you come up with?
It's usually something maybe that happens during the day. Maybe there's something about that particular climb. It could be something that's going on within, with your life as well. So it's very personal. And it really depends on a lot of factors. And that's kind of the fun part, is to go and climb this thing. And it could be just an experience that you had that really, that's how you name it. So the pillar that broke, I called it Warpath. This big giant pillar fell to the ground, and I was able to go back a week later and actually climb it and send it clean, and I called it Warpath. So you can have some fun with names.
The coolest name you've named a route is?
Probably there's one called Tap Out, and that one's over in the Bighorns.
It sounds like you didn't make it up.
I actually did, but it's just like one of the most unique, gorgeous ice climbs probably in Wyoming. And I can't even describe it because it's so gorgeous, but the colors and everything just, and I had gone to it twice before I got to climb it because it was really thin. And so I waited, as we talked about earlier, is it structurally stable to climb? It wasn't. And so we ended up coming back a couple of times before I was able to decide that, okay, yeah, this thing looks like it's ready to go. So it needed to bake a little bit longer. So knowing when to tap out is always a good thing.
Give us an idea of the history of ice climbing in the state. Is the Cody area where it's happened first, or have there been other places? Give us a historical context about how people have worked this sport in Wyoming.
Yeah, probably the original waterfall ice climbing. Again, I don't know, but I would imagine it probably started here in Cody. It started with Kurt Cousins, Todd Cousins. They were kind of the original pioneers of the valley. And they started in the 80s. Back then, the 80s, the equipment was pretty bleak. And it was probably hard to find as well back then. But they were kind of the guys that started things here in the valley. And then by the 90s, mid to early 90s, people started kind of hearing about it a little bit, really kind of more the elite ice climbers at that point. Alex Lowe, Conrad Anchor, some of those people started hearing about it, and they started coming to Cody. And then I came in the late 90s, 98, and really just kind of hit the ground running, and I'm still here, still going after it.
There are man-made places to ice climb in the United States and across the world.
There are now communities, Ouray, Colorado. There's a couple more as well that have now farmed the ice. So they've got maybe an irrigation ditch or a pipe of some sort. The one in Ouray is full sprinkler system. And there's actually, I think they employ like 5 or 6 people throughout the winter to run this thing. And people come from all over the place to climb in Ouray, Colorado. It's one of the largest ice festivals in the United States. And it has taken a community that really had not much going on in the wintertime. In fact, most of the hotels, restaurants closed, to now it's a very booming winter town in the wintertime.
Somebody has an interest, Aaron, who's watching this today, and they're thinking, I'd like to learn. What's your advice?
My best advice is if you know somebody that ice climbs, ask them to take you out. The next best thing to that, there's 2 other options. One would be hire a guide. There's lots of guide services in Wyoming that are all very knowledgeable, can take you out. The other option would be attending an ice festival. So there's ice festivals across the United States. We're working on one in Cody that will hopefully be running next year. It'll be called the Wyoming Ice Festival. It's hopefully going to be a very, very good event.
Did you build that cave that's right behind you? Did you put that together?
Yep.
Where's it at?
Yeah, it's at Heart Mountain Gym here in Cody, Wyoming, and Amy Cowan owns it, and she was very nice enough to allow me to build this training structure behind me, and to also work out in her gym. It's an amazing gym, and it's really this is where I put my work in this time of year. Right this time of year, I'm usually in here about 4 days a week, training pretty hard. So April usually starts the training cycle for me, and I'll train very hard all the way until about October. And then once the season starts, I'm really not training so much anymore.
You see some rock climbing routes that are categorized from maybe a little bit easier to a little more difficult. Are there routes where you climb that are also classified that way, and is that information available?
Yeah, so the water ice ratings go from basically water ice 2 to water ice 7, which I don't really believe there is water ice 7. It's kind of a messed up grading system, which I won't go down that road. But water ice 6 would be, pretty dangerous, do not fall territory. Water ice 5 would be a pure, completely vertical ice fall for at least more than 100 feet. And then from there, the ratings start to kind of drop as, angles change and things like that. Yeah, I'm working on the new guidebook for Cody, Wyoming right now. That guidebook will encompass all of the ice climbing for the Bighorn Basin. We haven't had a new ice climbing guide here for quite some time. It'll encompass all of the new routes that I have put up, which is well over 100 first ascents. So I'm really excited to share all of those unique climbs and new valleys for people to go check out.
Before we go, Aaron, are you an adrenaline junkie? Is that what attracts you to this sport?
I wouldn't consider myself an adrenaline junkie. I would consider myself somebody that likes pushing themselves out of the comfort zone a bit. What I like more than anything is when I'm out doing these things, I'm only thinking about moment to moment. I'm not thinking about anything else that's going on in my life, work, whatever it might be, it's gone. All I'm thinking about is that moment. So in times like these, I really would love to go climb because it would take my mind off of everything else that's going on in the world and be able to escape that. But it wouldn't be the right thing to do right now.
I think, though, Aaron, truly there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said, and that maybe if anything, people can take from learning from what you do, even though they may not be able to do it themselves, how important it might be to have something to focus on to take our minds away from maybe all of the other stresses of the world. So.
For some, it can be climbing. For me, it's climbing, right? But it could also be a walk. It could be, as I've told people on my Instagram, go for a walk. Don't go on the trail. Just go walk into the woods. Go see what's out there. It's those types of things that I think will do us a whole lot of good right now, just to kind of escape a little bit and let your mind at ease.
Well, Aaron, you've been so kind to us, and we really appreciate your willingness to give us access now 2 times. Plus, the day that we got to film with you was a day I think that Kyle Duba and our colleague Nate Chucker will never forget. And we really appreciate that you've been able to take time with us on Wyoming Chronicle. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Funding for this program is made possible in part by the Wyoming Humanities Council, helping Wyoming take a closer look at life through the humanities, thinkwhy.org, and by the members of the Wyoming PBS Foundation. Thank you for your support.